Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm Heather Burnt-Santy. I'm really excited. You guys are going to love this one. My guest in this episode is Tamar Jacobson. Hello.
Hello there.
Thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
What would you, before we jump into conversation, what would you like folks to know about you?
I'm getting old.
We're all getting old, Tamar. That's daily.
Oh no, I'm really getting old. I turned 74 last week, and oh my goodness.
Congratulations.
It's profound. The ankle and whatever.
Mhm.
But I'm still on the circuit, though. I'm still working. I'm retired from being a professor, but I'm still consulting and professing.
Uh-huh.
Was just recently in West Virginia and St. Louis, and I was thinking of really retiring that too, but somehow I still feel I've got more to say, and
Yeah.
I want to continue.
Oh, well, that's wonderful news. I mean, of course, if you want to rest and retire, that's great. But I love so much of the work that you do that I'm grateful that you're still doing it. So we're gonna talk about one of the chapters from your book, Everyone Needs Attention, Helping Young Children Thrive. And this came out maybe 5-ish years ago. Does that sound right to you?
Yes, 2018. That's right.
So I'll just do this for the people who are looking at the video version.
Yeah, I do love the cover.
I do too. Yeah. So we're going to talk about self-regulation. And I can't remember. I must have posted something somewhere on social media about self-regulation
recently.
And you commented, and we're part of that conversation. And you have a whole chapter on the topic in this book. So I'm going to go ahead and just read this. It's a little bit longer quote than usual, but it's from your self-regulation chapter. And it gives us a good starting point for the direction that we've talked about going with this. So you wrote, "So where do I begin to talk about self-regulation? This is the latest buzzword for young children learning some kind of self-control when it comes to behavior and classroom management. The intent behind the expression is admirable. To succeed academically and emotionally, children need to learn how to live in society by understanding its norms and rules. We also want them to become contributing members of our society, our adult world. Somehow, however, teaching children to self-regulate becomes punitive as teachers and parents take on a behaviorist approach using punishments and rewards. Instead, self-regulation becomes about pleasing people and stifling emotions. I will do anything, just please don't ignore me. What about empathy and compassion or making a stand for social justice? How do we learn these characteristics and skills? By pleasing people." So there's a lot in there. You packed a lot into that paragraph. But let's start with this idea of how it's become a buzzword, and what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, because I think it is important and it is serious that children learn how to adapt to the adult. I'm sorry about that. To the adult world. So I'm not dissing it, and I really want that set up front, because somehow it could be misconstrued that I think that children should really be allowed to do whatever they want, and that's not what I mean. I mean, it is kind of what I mean, but it's not what I mean.
Okay.
So I think it's serious. The only problem is that so many of us have been taught to self-regulate by stifling feelings, by fear, and not with encouragement and understanding and empathy and compassion. And so when we come to working with children and helping them accommodate us, actually, because that's what we're making them do, we seem to transfer all that stuff we've learned as children onto them. And most of it is punishment, actually. Setting them aside, making them sit silently alone. I call it, isolation. It's what we do to prisoners too. We put them in isolation. We do that with children in classrooms, where they have to sit aside and watch everybody else as if they're bad human beings. And so I do think it's important, but I think that people are using punishment to make it work.
Yeah.
And they're not aware of it, actually.
Right. It's not that any of us are waking up thinking, I can't wait to punish kids today.
Right.
It's
Right,
sort
although
of just,
sometimes you would think so.
I
when
mean, there
things
may
happen.
be some, but most of us working with young children, I would hope, are not waking up with that thought.
Right.
But I think it's part of this sort of progression of euphemisms that we've developed to change the way we talk about behavior without really changing our expectations of children or our actions. Like we moved from punishment to discipline, and then from discipline to guidance, and then somewhere in there we kind of started just using social emotional learning as a euphemism for compliance, and self-regulation I think falls in that too.
Yeah.
If I can just do the right things as an adult, you will always behave, and that somehow we think that's an appropriate goal or an achievable goal. And I think it takes us away from what children really need when you talk about helping them with their emotions and the things you cover in this chapter. So I guess I'll just stop rambling and let you talk about some of
No, that's fine. Because I was rereading the chapter. I haven't read it in a while. I've been talking about it on when I go out to do professional development. But I reread it, and there are a couple of headings. And the one that really struck me this morning when I was reading it, I have to say, and I'm really not a proud person like that, but gee, I loved this chapter, and I thought, gee, it's written really well.
That's good for you. That's all right.
And I mean, was it's like the truth. Looking at the cover and thinking, who wrote this? But there's a part about disruption that I write about, and that word is used a lot. Yeah. Children are always disrupting us. And, we have this agenda. We're going to talk about the weather today, this amazingly uninteresting and terribly boring topic for children, where we'll sit them down for 20 minutes and we'll slap up on the board these stupid pieces of cotton to show clouds and I don't know what. And children are like pinching each other by that stage because it's so boring. Yeah. I mean, when we're at cocktail parties, we talk about the weather because we don't know the people we're talking to. It's a boring topic, right? And then a child does something in that context and we say he's disrupting us. Disrupting us from what exactly, Right. And what's wrong with disruption? I mean, our whole world is based on this, that things have to go like this, but we're, one thing after another in a kind of routine way, but we're all human beings with unique needs and I don't know what. And life is messy, and disruption actually is an opportunity for enhancement and enlarging your awareness and your thought process. And it's actually really an important thing. Because, when I'm presenting or whatever, and somebody will take me off track, it's a good thing because then I can go in a different direction and maybe learn something from them or whatever. Yeah. So this idea that children are disrupting us from this really important thing that we are doing, is very dangerous, actually.
I really appreciated in my reread of the chapter last night that analogy of you as a presenter. Having your plan, having your outline, but being willing to sort of set it aside or take a break or what when someone in your group that you're speaking to expresses a need for something different, which is essentially what's happening when when an adult takes us in that context. I just presented a couple of workshops at our state conference, and at the end of one I was like, I was all over the place and I didn't stick with my topic enough. And my friend who'd been in the session with me said, but that's what they needed, right? That's what's relevant to them in that moment. So that's what they needed, and that made you more effective, hopefully. And I think that can really translate into this thinking of, circle time is an easy time to think about children being disruptors. And we're worried so much about our agenda that we're putting a lot of weight on their shoulders to self-regulate. And in that context, the self-regulation isn't for the child.
No.
It's for us. And I think that's a powerful shift, to make that explicit instead of just sort of feeling it, but to say it out loud. I think we need to say it out loud more often.
Well, circle time actually, and the research actually can back me up on this. Most of the children are not learning very much in circle time.
Mhm.
Maybe one-on-one in small groups, they'll be learning more, or
Mhm.
when they're interacting in play and you're facilitating discussion while they're doing that, they'll be learning. But circle time is sort of a social time, really. That's what it should be.
Should be, right.
What it's become is this, like, what I call teaching for the afterlife, because they're preparing children for real serious school where you've got to sit still and listen to the teacher drone on.
Mhm.
That's serious education, right?
Mhm.
And so they're preparing children to sit still in circle time, and most of the topics are so boring. I mean, I watched a teacher in a kindergarten classroom, actually, when I was supervising student teachers, and she was talking about carrots, and there wasn't a single carrot in the classroom, not a real carrot anywhere, not growing, not to eat, nothing. And there was going to be some assignment where they'd have to go back to their desk, and there was a cutout carrot they were
Oh,
going to
boy.
have to color. And
Okay.
they had to color it in orange,
Mhm.
and then cut it out and put it in their cubby. That was the thing. And this whole circle time was about that.
Yeah.
And so this one poor kid was trying to put up his hand and tell them about the carrots that his mom was growing in his garden. And she never allowed him. In fact, she put him in timeout because he was
Oh my
so
gosh.
disruptive, you see.
Boy.
And who knows what the children were learning in that circle time, except how to go and do this ridiculous thing that they had
Right.
to do afterwards.
And also that this kid, there's something wrong with this kid.
Yes.
That's the other thing that we learn, that children learn when we're in a situation where disruption or interruption is seen as misbehavior and they're sent
Absolutely.
off somewhere. It really creates a stigma.
Right.
Because honestly, it's usually the same child.
Right.
Children.
Very often.
And so we talk about a goal for these things to be building classroom community, but we're building classroom community for some.
Exactly.
And excluding others pretty strategically.
And imagine if she had allowed him to talk, then we could be discussing real carrots in a garden, and maybe we could bring those carrots in and children could kind of share in the eating of them or whatever, or plant them or something. I mean, the whole thing, the disruption for that ridiculous structural task, which was meaningless to the children, really. Disruption is a very bad word to use. I think it makes us feel that what we're doing is so terribly important, and what children need is not. It's just by the use of that word. That's what I was experiencing when I reread that.
Yeah, and if we bring it back to like an adult in a presentation kind of analogy, if I'm in an audience listening to a speaker, watching a presentation, whatever, the things I do to regulate myself and keep myself focused are wiggling. I'm crossing and uncrossing my legs. I'm shifting myself around so I'm more comfortable, so I can focus on what's happening. I remember when I had hurt my knee and it was in a brace and I couldn't cross my legs, sitting in meetings was torturous because I couldn't think about anything but how uncomfortable my body was and how dysregulated I felt by that. And it's the same thing. A lot of these disruptive behaviors we see are children attempting to regulate themselves.
Right, exactly.
By bringing their bodies into something that's more comfortable to try and focus on whatever's in front of them.
Yes, because very often in the circle time situation of the disruption situation that we're talking about, children are forced to sit in a certain way. Whereas certainly young children, it's uncomfortable for a lot of them to sit in a certain way.
Mhm.
I mean, I had circle time for years when I was a preschool kindergarten teacher, and my kids were allowed to lie on their stomachs or sit cross-legged if they want, or anything,
Yeah.
because their bodies have different needs. And like you said, it's, you do have to wiggle a little bit sometimes to
Yeah.
focus.
So we've talked a lot about what self-regulation isn't so far. What would you offer then as so what does true
Yeah,
self-regulation look
that's
like, and how do we support that?
that's a great question. And of course, I'll always bring it back to the people who are going to be teaching children, right?
Yeah.
Because that's my focus.
Yeah.
It's really, I can say what works for me, but it might not work for another person who's had a different childhood or a different life experience, or even a different teacher education experience.
Mhm.
So we have to tap into what's comfortable for us, for sure. And so that's a constant negotiation. We're not always doing it in the classroom. We might have to go home and think about it and write about it or whatever, or draw about it, whatever. But the one thing that I can stress is to isolate children and leave them alone with it, whatever it is, because they don't usually know why they've been left alone. And I mean, I've interviewed children in timeout, and they haven't a clue why they're there, half of them, most of them actually. And sometimes they think they're there because somebody else hurt them. They don't know. They don't always get it, because we say, go there and think about it. And what do we know what they're thinking about?
Mhm.
I mean, we had a little 4-year-old who was thinking about coming back. She said it to me, I'm going to come when I'm big with a machine gun and kill you all.
Oh
So
no.
we
Yeah.
don't want her thinking that, right?
Yeah.
So isolating children doesn't teach them self-regulation. It teaches them fear and to stifle feelings. That's all it does. But we do have to take them out of certain situations where they're hurting themselves or other people. But we don't have to isolate them. We could be with them, right?
That element of co-regulation before they
Yes.
can be expected to fully
Yes.
self-regulate.
Because I like the analogy of presenting too, in that. But in that case, we're all adults in the room, and my focus with the adults in the room isn't actually to take care of them as such. But as a teacher, I'm responsible for the physical and emotional life of those little people in my care. And it's a different thing. So I really owe them to be there for them and help guide them through what they have to go through in learning how to be an adult, because they're not adults yet.
Yeah.
That's the point. We all think they're adults already. They're not.
Yeah, there's a section in the chapter about making children a priority.
Yes.
And so that sounds like kind of what you're describing here is.
Yes. When I was rereading it too, I realized I'm on your sideness is really my thing about being with children. I want to be on your side, because I mean, I know it comes a lot from my childhood too, that nobody took a stand for me.
Right.
And so I'm going to take a stand for children all over the place now, from now on, because then I redeem myself too as I do that. But I think that's what we need to be doing for children, is to say, I'm here for you. I believe you and I trust you. Because otherwise, how else are you going to believe in yourself and trust yourself if I don't, right?
Right.
Which doesn't mean I'm going to allow you to do whatever you want. But if you're feeling antsy and I don't know why, I'm going to trust that you're feeling antsy right now. And I'm going to help you through that. Right now, we've got to be doing this and that and this. And what you're doing now is not working out. It's not helpful to other people. It's not helpful to you. So I'm going to put you next to me here, and you can work next to me quietly. And every now and again, I'm going to stroke you and say, I'm right here, right? It doesn't always work, because he may be jumping out of his skin by that point, right?
Yeah.
I used to carry children right up to age 5 on my back, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a carrier.
But a lot of
Um,
people don't want to do that stuff,
No,
right?
no. In fact, that's how I blew my knee out when I was talking about my knee injury, is I was holding a 5-year-old while we were dancing, and it was
Yes,
too much
yes,
for
exactly.
my old aging knees.
Yes, I
You know,
think the co-regulation is a lovely way to put it. I can
yeah,
help you regulate yourself. I'll show you the way. I'll show you. One of the examples I often give is like, at cleanup time. Teachers stand and point. It's cleanup time. It's time to. But if you have a child who's running around and doesn't want to clean up, he's very often put in timeout. So then he doesn't clean up. I mean, that's not the point, right?
yeah,
So I like to take children on my back literally, and I go and clean up with them, talking and saying, well, we've got to clean up now. I'm going to put the bricks here. I'm going to do that. And I'm talking all the time.
uh-huh,
Child isn't happy to be on my back always. They want to be running around and doing whatever it is they're doing. And they're in a way still cleaning up because they're with me in the process of it.
yeah,
And I've heard a lot of people say, oh, you're rewarding them and, by giving them all that attention. But I've never found that. I've never found that other children are kind of, please take me on your back while we clean up. Nobody's ever asked me to do that.
right.
Um,
Or
it,
the fear is that everyone will start running around instead of cleaning up,
yes,
and you've
yes.
only got one back. But that's a myth too, in my experience,
I
that
have never
if you make
experienced
a
it.
special allowance for one, everybody's going to want it.
Yeah.
It doesn't,
It doesn't, because each child is unique and have different needs. It's that same thought that all children are the same. They all need the same rewards and punishments. They all need the same. Everyone is different,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I know I knock rewards and punishments in that chapter a bit, but for
That's
some
okay with
children it
me.
works. It depends.
Well, I think that's an authentic.
Yes.
I think when you're talking about rewards and punishments, at least when I'm thinking about that behaviorist approach, I'm thinking about something that's been specifically manufactured to bribe or to punish.
Yes.
Not necessarily that, oh, I had a need and you met it. That's rewarding, surely,
Right.
but not necessarily a behaviorist reward. Do you know what I'm saying?
The other myth is that children have wonderful time. It's because they're children.
Yeah.
They don't have to work and they're so lucky. But children have no control over their lives at all.
Right.
People die and leave them. People divorce and leave them. People take them to different schools that they didn't want to go to, or to different towns that they never asked to go for.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole world is built for adults and not for children. Light switches are too high, furniture's too big. I mean, everything is for adults. So children are not as happy-go-lucky as everybody thinks. They have a hard life, actually. And I think we need to take that into consideration when what you were describing, that children have disruptive behaviors. It's very often in their behavior, they're expressing some kind of anxiety, anger, jealousy, some kind of feeling that they don't know what it is. Yeah. And they need help understanding that.
Right.
And that's what we are there for.
Right.
And otherwise, why are we being paid so little?
Exactly. that observing and noticing and trying to meet the child where they are in the moment is a far more evidence-based approach to this than any canned curriculum about emotional development.
Oh, absolutely.
To be evidence-based is going to be. We worry so much about fidelity to this evidence-based packaged curriculum about social and emotional learning, and we ignore the opportunities to help them with their social and emotional development that are in front of us all the time.
I do know that my my thrust is more psychological and counseling. Perhaps I should have been a counselor. I think maybe now I'm a sort of counselor for teachers, actually. Yeah. But I do think that our work does need that a bit, that we need to be aware of children's emotions because they're so little, and we're helping them develop. So we're not just helping them develop how to walk or how to read or how to talk. We're also helping them develop their understanding of their emotions, which is kind of, it's really hard because most adults that I know have no clue what their emotions are or how to express them appropriately. Right. I mean, including
And
me.
that's why we're so uncomfortable when children have the big emotions,
Yeah.
and we think the appropriate response is to stop it, not necessarily to understand or help them understand.
Yeah, I mean, we continue that well into our adulthood. If
Yeah.
if we meet a friend who's just suffered a death, we have these banal comments. Well, they're in a better place now. I mean, what? The person is suffering terribly.
Yeah.
Just to hold still and sit with the person and validate their experience without talking all that rubbish. And we talk that rubbish because we're uncomfortable and we don't know
Right.
what to do with that. So it's really important to help children understand their feelings. I'm getting a little bit passionate as I talk. Do I sound whiny?
No. I don't think so. No, I think you just sound like somebody with a big message and a big heart for it.
It really
and a
it
big
really
brain.
is an important subject for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So can we one more thing I wanted to talk about from my reread. So in the quote that I read at the beginning, you talked about what about empathy and compassion, or making a stand for social justice? And then
Yes.
you have a chapter or a section here that's intolerance for nonconformist behavior.
Yes.
And I think those two connect. But I'd love to hear you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and that again is going to really feed into how we all grew up and what we learned. I mean, critical thinking and making a stand is not easy
Right.
for some people, and it's quite scary actually to stand up for someone else other than you, because that's what social justice is very often. It's to make a stand for those who can't make a stand for themselves, kind of thing, very often. And that requires courage. And we can't learn courage if we're all the time being fit into some kind of box, right? We've all got to walk down the corridor, all the children, in silence. I mean, I have never seen adults walk down any corridor in silence anywhere.
Right.
And yet children are forced into this kind of prisoner mode, right? Actually, I was at a school where they all had to walk with their finger on their mouths. It was so offensive. I wanted to sort of break out and start screaming.
Yeah.
I couldn't bear it.
Yeah.
And, it was all in the pretense of keeping the other classrooms safe from the noise of the children passing by. Close your door if you don't like the noise. I mean, there's some kind of weirdness with that. So I think if we want people to be sort of responsible citizens who think critically and speak out for others who are less fortunate than themselves, and we've got to allow them to be who they are, and that's not always going to fit into the box, right, of that structured carrot.
Right. But I mean, just sort of to tie it together, that box is our idea of self-regulation, right? It all comes back to the self-regulation conversation being about how children's, I'll say dysregulation, that may not be the word I want right here, impact adult goals and adult agendas and adult comfort, rather than it really being about trying to support the development of the children to be adults eventually. But what do they right now? What do they need from us? And right now, what will support them? And
because to
understand their feelings.
We want them to fit into the adult world when they're not yet adults. So it's very complicated, actually. And if we really want them to be responsible adults, it's important that they do know what their feelings are and how to express them, right? So I'm so angry because my mother's brought home a baby, and I thought I was the baby, and now this thing is here, right? And I hate it. I want to send it back. I'd like to chop off its head. I've got all kinds of feelings about this, and every time I go, oh, they say to me, "But you're the big brother, honey." And I can't feel those feelings. So I have to stuff them down And at another point, I'll take a gun and go and shoot a whole bunch of people because I don't know how else to express my feelings. I mean, I'm being very dramatic.
Right. Yeah.
And if we could just say to children, you don't have to love this baby right now. I love this baby. I want us to have another baby in the family. I want you to have a brother. But right now, you don't have to love your brother. You can't hurt him.
Right.
And one day I think you'll love him. But right now, if you're feeling upset or sad about it, you tell me. You come and you pull on my shirt and you say, I don't like this. I don't like this. And then I can give you a hug and a kiss.
Yeah.
And that way we can learn what these complicated feelings are of jealousy, of anger. And then we can find a way to express them and be supported.
Yeah.
That will make us fit into an adult world that I'd like to live in,
Right.
frankly.
Right. So many adults get dysregulated by children's emotions that they cannot, they have to figure that out for themselves. And I know you've got a whole book about the Don't Get So Upset book, but I think it's worth adding to the conversation here that a dysregulated adult can't co-regulate with a child very effectively. So we have to have that inner awareness and not just focus on what we want to stop, but think about, why is this actually shaking me up so much?
That book that I wrote, this latest book about everyone needs attention, comes out of the Don't Get So Upset book. Yeah. Because when I sort of started talking all over the place about that topic, that but we understand our feelings so that we can help us understand children. Everywhere I went, people were saying, but what about them needing attention? Like it was a bad thing. Right. And so I said to Red Leaf Press, can I just add a chapter about attention? And they said, well, what about a book? And so that's where the book came from. So actually, you're tying it together with that Don't Get So Upset is exactly right. Every time we're faced with children's emotions, our emotions come into play. Yeah. And my theory is that we filter discipline strategies through our emotional memory of punishment. So it's complicated because if I was shut down with my feelings when I was a child, I'm more likely to shut children's feelings down because that's what worked for my growing up. That's how I pleased the adults around me. Yeah. And I got a good pat on the head and I became worthwhile, right? So I'm going to veer in that direction unless I start to reflect on why I learned that way or why I was taught that way. And then maybe I can work it through. Because most people think that to co-regulate, I love that expression. I think that's what happened. You had a podcast. And
yes. Yeah, it was co-regulation versus compliance. That's the one. Yes.
And I was so thrilled with that term, co-regulation, because that's what I meant. What I kind of mean, right? That we work together with this. We don't just throw the child aside and say, learn how to live here, right? All on your own. Yeah.
Or else.
Yes. Or else. Yeah. We won't love you. The whole class won't love you. We won't talk to you or anything. Can you imagine? I mean, it's so exclusionary. It's too terrible. I don't know how anybody can learn anything from being excluded like that. Except that they're worthless. That's all they.
Right. They learn something.
Yes.
But not maybe what we want them to be learning.
Yes. Lillian Katz always says children are learning all the time. It depends what are they learning.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a terribly important part of how we work with children, especially with emotions, is that we have to be aware of our own emotions, negotiate that, find ways to deal with that. If it's to go to therapy ourselves or to create a little support group where we can talk about it. I mean, where is there a place for teachers to sit and say, God, this kid, I don't know who he reminds me of, but he reminds me of an ex-boyfriend who used to drive me crazy. Oh, that's why I don't like him, right? I mean, sometimes that helps. Or this little girl, she's so needy and she's so quiet and she's so, oh my gosh, she reminds me of me, right? That we don't have anywhere to grapple with this thing. And it's such an important part of child development, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why it's so complicated. I think that's why our discussions around behavior and guidance and whatever you want to call it can be so tricky, is because there's so much, you may not think, oh, I had a traumatic childhood, but maybe there were some of these elements of not being listened to, or being expected to never show your emotions, or being isolated and rejected when you did things that were wrong in the eyes of the adults around you. You may not have thought of that as a traumatic childhood, but
Right.
those things will impact you, and that lens is there. And to question it, we have to question all of our most important relationships
Right.
from growing up. And it's a big thing that takes intention and commitment from the adult
And
to do
willingness
some work.
to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because when I wrote Everyone Needs Attention, it was literally a few months after my mother had died. She was 99. She was a week short of 100. And we were good at the end, she and I.
Yeah.
But I was still longing for her recognition of me right till the end, and it never came in the way that I would have needed. So it was quite painful to write the book, but
Sure.
it was very good also by the same token. And I don't know why I was saying that, but what did you just said? See, this is 74.
I don't remember either. This is 52, I guess. I'm not sure. I was talking about how hard it is and how adults have to be willing to
right
do some of that work.
And I started, that's what it was, and I started to actually realize, I know it was late in life, but I started to realize viscerally with my body the trauma that I had gone through. And it when I said before that children don't have it easy, that they have it quite hard because they have no control over their lives.
Yeah.
I kind of feel that just about everybody has had some kind of a traumatic childhood. It's not big trauma,
Right.
but in many ways, things have affected them.
Right.
And I think we owe it to the children that we are working with and the families to work on ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we're not just dealing with cabbages, right? Or bank accounts. We're dealing with human beings.
Yeah.
And so we owe it to them to know who we are or why we got there, so that we don't, because very, very often we'll do things with children unconsciously hurting them. We don't mean it.
Right.
It's just that we were hurt and we keep on hurting.
Yeah.
Instead of stopping it, stop the cycle, just stop it.
Yeah. It's a lot.
I know.
So people need to read both. Don't get so upset. And Everyone Needs Attention as soon as they can.
Well, at least the chapter on self-regulation.
Yeah. They're both such good books.
Thank you,
Heather. And I use sections of Everyone Needs Attention in my teaching now at the college where I am. So I'm just really grateful for it.
Thank you.
And for this conversation.
Yeah, I'm grateful that you wanted to talk about it, because I was so excited to see what you had done in that other podcast.
Oh, yeah, you have a standing invitation. Anytime you've got something you want to talk about, share, you let me know. And
well, now actually it's worth it, because you're the best podcast, right?
Yeah, as of yesterday on one website. Yeah.
What is the website? It's wonderful.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will be not interesting for people to listen to me try to remember that, but I can't remember. The list was like 50 early childhood podcasts, 50 best early childhood podcasts you need to listen to in 2023 was the name of the list, if people need to find it. Lots of shows on there. Kristen Peterson's show is on there, and a couple of Jeff Johnson's shows are on there on that list. So
great. Yeah. No, if I talk to you, it's not because you're the best, but it's because you understand what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Oh, I just really appreciate it. Thank you. I think I need to probably need to wrap it up, and it's just sort of turning into a love fest now.
Absolutely, I understand. Great.
But thank you again so much. I know listeners will really love this this
You're
conversation.
welcome, Heather, and good luck with whatever.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, thanks everybody for listening to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd.
Bye-bye.
Bye.